3 minutes, Greg Garza.
Morning.
Morning, my friend.
How's everything going? Hey, at least I sent a message.
You did.
I was caught in traffic on the 285. So
Well, I mean, and we all know about Atlanta traffic being, an ish show 9 days a week. So
now with U.S. soccer being here, it's probably going to be worse.
Yes.
More jobs that are coming.
Well, what do you think about the A being the head of U.S. soccer now?
I love it because I think it hopefully create some opportunities for Beyond Goals mentoring to be involved. I went through the whenever I saw that, the first thing I did was call Parkey and say, dude, you played in the Olympics. You represented the U.S. men's team a lot of times. I am probably one of the very few kids that did every single camp from under 14s from the age of 12 all the way up until the full team. So there's only like maybe there's got to be less than 10 kids that have ever done that. I guess I am their exemplary player that goes through the whole entire process from the age of 12, the very first camp that we ever had in Boston. So that's pretty cool. So I was like, once that happened, when I heard that, I was like, Parkey, dude, this is us, man. They couldn't say no to us, right? So hopefully it'll all work out.
When you have the representation of a country, I mean, it is an entirely different responsibility, and I want to get into Julie Ertz here in a little bit, but it is a different set of responsibility, and I would think that it is a different set of emotional and athletic attachment to want to represent your country and be in that kind of a position.
Yeah, most people ask me what's the highlight of my career, and everybody from Atlanta always wants me to say the 2018 MLS Cup. But honestly, that's not the highlight of my career. The highlight of my career is be able to walk out and represent my country. I got to represent my country in every single age group. So that's something pretty special to be playing against, being 14 years old, playing against Mexico, or being, 15 years old playing against Brazil, or being 17 years old playing against Germany and Belgium and all these guys. And just goes down the list of so many countries I got to play against, but the representation of what it means to be an American and represent, so many people out there. That's my biggest pride and joy of my whole entire career. And I think like the moment playing against Czech Republic, my very first debut game, like coming on as a sub and kind of debuting in that game was like, just remember standing on the sideline and just looking back, just kind of having like flashes of just the whole entire process. From going to residency, I used to be in a residency program, which we had down in Bradenton. We used IMG as our campus. It was the top 40 players in all of the United States that live together. And kids these days, they don't have that. They have the the academy that they can be in, but they have these U.S. youth ID camps, which are great, but they're done in regions. But, that's also an honor to be. But I think back in my time, and I'm like, man, that's to be living with each other, with your brothers and representing your country. But it's 40 kids out of the whole entire country living together for 2.5 years, preparing for a special World Cup. And, I got to go through that. I mean, I believe Landon Donovan was the very first age group that did that. And to still, look back at that and be like, those were the best developmental years of my life. Those were the best developmental years to where I understood what it was to be a pro. That was the first mental coach that I ever had within that program. So I owe a lot to U.S. Soccer. They provided me with the opportunities to follow my dream and open doors to many different things within my career.
Nick Alifi for Greg Garza on a Friday Free Kick.
Yeah, if I can get my mute button to actually function right, that'd be just huge. So, Greg, I think you bring up a great point with the Bradenton and how Bradenton was set up, where it's this tremendous like esprit de corps, and you have this, I'm not, because I was in the Marines, right? So I know firsthand, like when you are working with a group of people day in and day out, it you have to treat people differently, because there may be people you don't like, but you have to work with them, right? Because in that, you're, like you said, you're 40 people, and you have to be all together, training, maximum development opportunities. Is that something that you think could work today, even with the academy setup? Is that something that you think could still work and benefit today?
In today's world, I think you're looking more towards base like a European, right? The European, the South American, the rest of the world setup, where all of these kids are at a club. They're at their clubs, and they're able to meet every few months and have their games, and kind of what we call it in Spanish and also Portuguese, but you call it concentration camps, which is kind of weird. I don't know why they call it that, but they call them concentration camps, to where these kids are, being put into an environment every few months, being together, kind of building those relationships, building those bonds. But there was a very special and unique process to what we had. You're going to school together. You are training together every single day. You're waking up. I remember those days of waking up at 5:45 every single morning as a 14-year-old and going to the gym, right? And that's where you have these 40 kids, to where the competitive environment is always there, because you have to break down those 40 kids into the top 23 to go to the World Cup and to go to qualifying. And so that competitiveness was maybe so much more. I honestly, and this is my honest assessment, is that I feel there are so many kids that take for granted where they are, whether they are at an Atlanta United Academy, where they are at Orlando, Minnesota, every single MLS academy. I think a lot of these kids, they take for granted of where they are. They take for granted because I think they've always been given. They've always been given, and they haven't been put into maybe what you're saying, Nick, is when I think back about what residency was, it was a very hostile environment, right? You have 40 kids living together every single day, grinding, and you see which ones truly want it more. I always tell my mentees that there was very few of us that, after waking up at 5:45 in the morning, going to the gym, everybody together doing fitness, right after that going to training, right after that eating lunch within like 10 minutes, right after that getting on the school bus, going to school for 4 hours, because that's all we did. And then after school, there was maybe a handful of us that were, maybe 6 or 7 guys that would still get together. We would get a ball bag, we would walk to the fields, or we would go back to the gym every single day. And out of those 6 or 7 kids, there were maybe 4 of us or 5 of us that went pro. Now, those other 36 kids, I can't tell you they did anything. And so that's just that mindset that I think that, kids these days, their hunger is I think just a little different. And I think it goes back into that self-acceptance of making a highlight reel on Instagram, or having them being accepted of working hard and doing the extra so they can film themselves and posting it. If that makes sense, to where for us, it was this unique hunger of one thing and one thing only, is how much can we value from the amenities around us to make the most of it, to take one step further to becoming a pro.
I understand this, John, because I have a 14-year-old son who is a player, and that's the thing that I'm seeing across the board, right? Is that it's, you have kids with skill sets that I'm 43. I don't recall seeing any kids, that when I was younger, that had the skill sets that I'm seeing today. But I am seeing a different drive, a different mentality, and maybe that's just it's just part of changing generations and things of that sort. But I do see what you're talking about, and I wonder if it's going forward from a national team perspective, from a professional perspective, how that's going to change the game in general. Because it's where before, if I'll use the Italian national team as an example, that's the team that I grew up following, and where the team is now compared to where the team was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It is like, it's not even the same universe that they were in. And so it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how that's going the international game and also the professional game for the next 5, 10, 15 years going forward.
Yeah, most definitely. John, you said you were going to say something.
Well, no, it's just you mentioned the idea of taking things for granted and all of this with this current generation. I mean, how, when you're with your mentees, how do you impress that message without using those words, or do you use those words that you're taking something like this for granted? Is that too harsh an assessment to give when it comes to being a mentee? How blunt can you be in trying to alert a mentee what's going on? How blunt as a mentor can you be to give the message that you want to give?
I think it depends on levels, right? It depends on levels of where you are. You can take the academy, for example. I think with them, we can be very blunt and honest of what they have in front of them, because these are kids that are investments, right? They're investments. Little do they know, right? And I think that's sometimes that they don't realize where. I think about my youth, and I think about going through the Sao Paulo ranks, or getting to Sporting Lisbon, and just thinking about these kids already knew that they were investments. They knew that they had a lot of time and money invested in them to be living on campus, or to be, provided food every single day, or, and I think within the world that we live in today, I think a lot of kids automatically think that that's something that is just always going to be provided. And I think even when Mike and I talk about just the location and the opportunities and the amenities and everything that these kids are provided, even within the academy, real life is not like that, right? You look at the opportunities that they are given, and you think, okay. And you and I have talked about this before. I always say I hold my kids to a high level of expectation, but I almost want them to suffer. I want them to go through some sort of suffering. And I mean, Nick, you could probably speak this if you're training with the Marines, and to find your threshold, to find what you can take and how far you can take it. Now that's such a fine line, I think, these days to teach with kids, because I've seen it even with my own son. There's sometimes so much suffering or self-acceptance that they have to go through, to where it can just absolutely crush everything that goes through their mind. So I think, going back to what you said, John, it's all about levels of understanding the type of conversations that you can have. Because I do think this new generation of young kids is more of a buildup rather than a beat down. And for maybe myself, or even you guys, when you were kids, it was more about getting beat down.
Yeah.
To see how quickly you could pick yourself up. And I honestly just don't think that we are in a generation of that anymore. And maybe we have swung we've swung maybe a little bit too far on the other side of things. Of everything is build me up, to where it's really hard sometimes, to when those kids do see failure or see suffering or go through an obstacle or a hurdle that they have to get over, because they are so used to being built up. And you're right. It's just a generational thing. And I hope there can be a medium and a median kind of to kind of be within the next few years. But that's where I think that mentorship does come in. It is important to learn from people's experiences. It is important to really listen and take it all in of what others go through. The only reason I think I was able to surpass certain levels or moments within my career is because I had seen others go through them, or I had taken example of my mentors or my people that I had in my corner of helping me understand those things. That's much needed in today's world.
Nick, go for it.
Yeah, and at Paris Island, it was we're gonna strip you down to ground zero and rebuild you back up. And I was like 5'5" and 100 and maybe 10 pounds soaking wet. And for me, I think nowadays it's going to be more about proof, right? We're going to prove to you that you have more in you than you think you do, right? Like when it comes to that effort, when it comes to that, the ability to, you think you're tired, but you have another gear or two in you that you can push, and you can be so much better. Just let us prove it to you. We're not going to have to tear you down necessarily, because I agree with you that I don't think this generation is a group that you can take down to ground zero and rebuild. I think that it is more about showcasing that with extraordinary effort, there's an opportunity to have extraordinary results. That doesn't guarantee you those results, but it means there's an opportunity to achieve extraordinary results. And if you don't try to put in that extraordinary effort, we can pretty much guarantee you're not going to get the extraordinary result. But it's tough to prove that, I think, to kids these days. That's why I love what you guys are doing, Greg. When you're talking about the mentorship and providing opportunities for kids to come in and to learn firsthand from champions. My son, he'll get on Instagram and he sees like these little clips of Kobe talking about like all these kids were going to get shoes if everybody ran, the touchline to touchline, and one kid missed by a half inch because he was trying to shortchange, and none of the kids got shoes. And that kid forever is like, no, I'm putting in maximum effort from here out. Or, we watched The Last Dance and he sees, what a psycho Jordan was when it came to training and preparation and mentality. And he, it's one thing to watch those clips, but there's still that distance that occurs because it's a television screen or a phone screen. It's different when you have a human being sitting in front of you who's been a champion, who's reached the highest levels, and can sit there and bring that sort of wisdom to you. And I think that's what's great about what you and Parky are doing with your mentorship program.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
When did, Greg, do you think kids turn into investments as opposed to son, daughter, friend, student athlete that has a future? When do you think we flipped from someone with a future to an investment? Because I think those are two different things. When do you think that changed?
Yeah, well, I wish I could make my 6-year-old already an NIL player. I'll try and reach out to some agents here pretty soon. The kid is something else. No, I'm just kidding. Look, I think it's when you realize there is an opportunity to take something as far as you can go, and that's what I tell every kid, right? You want to dream big, have big dreams. Dreams are a part of life. They are a part of what we live for. They give us that motivation. They give us that inner and self, drive that we have, the desire, the fire that burns inside of us. That's what dreams give. But when you come down to the reality of things, just how far can you take something, right? How far can you take something? And that's what I tell every single mentee that I work with is, dream of being that player on TV, because you never know when dreams can come true. You never know. But in the meantime, how far can this sport take you? How far can this sport take you in regards to maybe using it to get a free education, maybe using it to be one step ahead from the average person, right? Or the average Joe. And I think that's an important thing for kids to start understanding when they do get in their teen years, is to, okay, how far can I take this? And if there is an opportunity, at least I've made myself ready for it. So in regards to being an investment, I think it's more so of these kids that are at the pinnacle and at an elite level to where everything is given to them, right? And so I think that's where the academies are that's where these kids are being investments. I went through the residency program in Bradenton. I was an investment. Out of those 40 kids, I'm being provided food every single day. I'm being provided free schooling. I'm being provided free fields, free everything, free clothes, free gear, free cleats. I bought my first pair of cleats the other day to play pickup with my friends, and it had been more than 18 years since I had bought a pair of cleats. And so I look back at that and I say, wow, that's, a pair of cleats. I probably had over 1,000 cleats in my career, right? Or, close to hundreds and hundreds of pair of cleats. And I didn't pay a dime for one of them. And that just shows, okay, well, I was considered an investment to these brands or to these organizations. And that's where I think that maturity level of understanding that for me was massive. Like that pride of understanding, okay, I'm 13 years old and I'm getting all this free stuff. Like I'm gonna make their time worthwhile. I'm gonna make sure they know that I'm not gonna take this moment for granted. I'm gonna make sure they know that I'm gonna give it absolutely everything that I can to make sure that their investment is something that can hopefully turn out to be something that's worthwhile to them.
Nick, go for it.
So when it comes to preparation for the mentees, right? When you're preparing one of your sessions, can you talk a little bit about that process? Because I imagine every session is a bit different. I imagine every one of your mentees is a bit different. Can you talk to us a little bit? Because as somebody who is in your wheelhouse, right? As a dad with a teenage son who is always talking about, I want to do this, I want to do that. Like you talked about those big dreams. How would an interaction go between me and you if I were interested in sending my son to your program?
Yeah, every conversation is very custom tailored, right? It's like uh, the one thing for us as mentors is that we have we learn with these mentees, and every mentee and every player, every individual thinks about themselves, they think of themselves um, so differently than everybody else. The one main thing that I always look for within every kid and how to kind of gauge the initial conversation is what they think about themselves initially. How do they view themselves in the mirror? And that's something that's a huge gauge for me to how to tailor the conversation, how to give personal experiences. But having a very honest assessment of, okay, what does this kid not only think of themselves, how do they think on the field, what frustrates them, how do they view, and how do they cope with pressure, what do they view leadership as, have they dealt with adverse moments, and how have they gone through them, how have they persevered, what obstacles have they gone through. And every kid at every single in different phases and ages of their lives have all been through all those different things. They've all struggled with confidence at one point. They've all had moments of whether good leadership or bad leadership. They've all had moments of adversity. They've lost games, or they've been the reason of losing a game. And so it's interesting for us. The most interesting part for us is to see what their reaction has been to all of those. And I think that's where I think for most kids, I believe that most kids will say the first question that we always ask them is what do you feel the game is today, more mental or physical? Most kids will say the mental game is more important, but what is their character like? What are their personality traits? What are their strengths that they have within the mental side of the game? And I think for Mike and I, we always say, look, we're no psychologists. I'm not a psychologist. I didn't do psych at all in school. But that's where you mentioned, Nick, is that experience, that personal knowledge and wisdom within the game, and being in their shoes at one point is extremely important. And I think with every single parent, one of our biggest points is, look, I have 3 kids of my own. My oldest is extremely talented, but if I say one thing, it goes through one ear and it goes right out of the other. And I will always be dad. I will never be the guy who won trophies or who represented my country at every single age group. I will not be that guy because, dad, you know nothing. And sometimes my son hearing someone else speak, or maybe in your case, your son watching Kobe or watching Michael Jordan, you might give an example of those things. And I guarantee you it's probably gone through one ear and right out of the other. But when he watches that on TV or when he sees somebody else speak, it hits them differently. And it just has that much more of an impact. So, I think all in all, our mentorship program it's a big brother companionship. It's just being a big brother. It's helping them understand each and every phase and building leaders of tomorrow, right? And whatever they do and however far they're able to take soccer. Mike and I know that we were not the best on every team, but we were great pros and we were great people, and we made good decisions, and we made decisions that would always help us rather than hurt us. And I think for kids, we want them they're going to go through certain phases and certain journeys within their lives to where they have to understand, whether it's in soccer or whether it's in the corporate world or whether it's being an entrepreneur or whatever it is, we want them to always make the best decisions that they can for themselves. And that's kind of like our pitch to every parent, and in helping them understand the value of mentorship. I was very blessed and grateful to have so many positive role models within my career and within my youth life, that those lessons I will forever use in anything that I do to try and be as successful as I can be. One major question that I always ask kids, and it's crazy to see this answer. Every answer I've always gotten the same, and I always ask kids, what are the 2 most valuable things that you can have in your life? And every kid will start by saying success and being happy. And, I love that kids feel that. I love that kids feel the aspiration to be successful and they have the drive, but every kid uses that. And I feel like in my world, I always tell them, well, I don't agree with you. I think the 2 things to feel in life are to feel loved and to feel happy. Right. And when you have those 2 things, you're more likely to have and hopefully grow your success. But everybody wants to be happy, man. And everybody, we all want to feel loved, man. We have our parents, we have people around us, we have people in our corner, and nobody wants to be successful, but have nobody around them. You need the right people in your corner to also go through those successful moments and even those dark moments as well. So that's pretty much the basis of everything that we do and what we kind of encompass. And we have a passion for it, and we love what we do, helping kids understand not only the game much better, but also hopefully life.
I'll say that it's very validating to hear that you have the same challenges as every other dad, where it's like, yeah, hey man, I've won trophies. I've represented my country. Yeah, sure, dad. Okay, great. And my son asked me one time, he's like, Dad, what about free kicks or corners? And I'm trying to say, well, you just got to just repetition, man. Just do it over and over again until, you're going to figure out your best motion and, the amount of weight to put under the ball. And he's like, yeah, sure. And so we go to a Dick's Sporting Events where Atlanta United had players, and he meets Kevin Kratz. And so he asked Kevin Kratz the same question. And Kevin says, I take about 27 free kicks, and if I miss one, I do 27 more. And the next day, my son's like, we got to go. We got to go to the field, Dad. I got to do like 27 free kicks. But you're right. The right person with the right advice makes all the difference, right? I mean, it's crazy how that works. And kids, man.
But before I head out, this will be the last thing I say, because I heard this on this is an Atlantean entrepreneur that I heard the other day speak on some Instagram motivational video. That's all that pops up on my explorers and my thread. But this was he said it was the 100-hour rule. Do you guys know that, the 100-hour rule?
No.
The 100-hour rule is that if you do something, if you want to get, find an expertise in something, and let's say you play the guitar for 18 minutes a day for one full year. That's all you need is 18 minutes a day. You'll hit 100 hours. and you will be better than 95% of everybody else who has ever tried or plays a guitar. If you play 18 minutes a day to hit that 100-hour by 1 full year. And so you look at it and you think just everything, right? Going to the gym. If you go to the gym at least 18 minutes a day, you will be fitter than 95% of the whole entire world's population. Playing a guitar, play the piano. I tell kids all the time, juggle for 18 minutes, man. Juggle for 18 minutes a day. 18 minutes flies by. And you will be a better juggler by the end of the year if you do it every single day than 95% of those people around you. So that just goes to show that it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to do the little extra. So that's one you can use for your son, Nick, if you want to, man.
I appreciate it, and I absolutely will.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you, guys.